Hello and happy Friday. I'm here with Powell, Andrew, Lana, and Jason for the GameDev show. We've got a lot of interesting, that's Jason's story. We've got a lot of interesting topics to talk about today, and I think some pretty exciting stuff that's coming up. Before we get started, I just want to give everybody a chance to say hello, pronounce your names however you want, Jason, and go ahead. Anybody wants to dive in and say hi?
Hello, everyone. I'm Lana. Nice to meet anyone new here. I was on before, about a month ago. Nice to be on again. Thanks for hosting, Jason.
Hello, Nobody else ever says thanks. Andrew, you're going to say thanks?
Yeah, thanks, Jason, for hosting and for being here. I'm Andrew. I'm from InfinityPBR.com.
And speaking of, you actually have a cool monster bundle that you just released, right? The biggest one you've ever done?
There's no new monsters in this bundle, but folks always ask me, do you have a giant bundle of lots of stuff at once? I think because once you decide on an art style for your prototype or project that you're going to be working on, it's nice to get a whole bunch of stuff that looks the same. And so I decided to finally make a giant monster bundle. And because the Asset Store has a new release discount, I, of course, used it, and now it's half off for the next 2 weeks. So it's 20 characters for like all of $12.50 each or something. Very cheap.
Yeah, it's a big pack. I mean, it's the biggest, newest one you've got. And yes. Go check it out. The link is down there in the description. Anybody else want to say anything?
I've got nothing new, really, except as I said, I'm slightly excited to say the last one of these shows, I did mention that I was trying to figure out what to do my talk on, and I have figured it out. So we can go over that a bit later. That's my only exciting news.
Yeah, that's actually an exciting one. I saw a quick preview of it. I'm kind of excited to talk about that, and that'll be up at GameDev Guild in about 2 weeks now. It's going to be really exciting too. And we've also got a pre-event Mixer meetup thing happening tomorrow we're going to open it up around 10 a.m. Got a couple round tables and do a little bit of mastermind group matchmaking and a couple other little social events. Good chance to just go meet people. And it's open to everybody that's registered, the student passes and everybody else. And talk a little bit about what's going on with Nature Manufacturer.
Yeah, hi. We right now have some sale on Unreal Marketplace. If you're using Unreal, you can check it out. There's, I think, Forest and Weimann is 70% off this in this sale, so it's quite good to check. We are also working on our final lava asset that should be some teaser video in next 2 weeks.
Nice. So speaking of lava assets, one of the things that came out of GDC that I've been wanting to ask you about was that they showed off some new kind of like a water setup stuff. Have you seen that? And do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've seen it. I'm still waiting till they release it because I think the water in Unity was released in 2022.2 new version. And it had a memory leak. I hope that it was finally closed because on my 3080, my graphic card couldn't handle it when I tried to do something realistic with it. So yeah, I think it's a good idea, good road they're taking, but it still is some time ahead before it's usable. There are way better solutions on Asset Store right now.
Yeah, that was kind of what it seemed like at the time, but I was just curious what your thoughts were on it, because you know way more about it than I do about water, rivers, and all that kind of stuff. So there are a lot of different topics that I wanted to talk about today. I think I want to start, though, with Jason Story's topic for the conference, because you've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks now, trying to figure out what it was you wanted to talk about, if it was going to be something architectural, some cool tips, or if it's going to be a game design related thing. There's a lot of different things that I think that you're pretty good at. I'm going to move you over here, so you're looking the right direction. Looks like you're looking right up at me. So yeah, I was just curious, you want to share now?
Yes,
and tell
sure.
everybody
So
what it is that you're going to be talking about at GameDev Guild.
what I settled on is so I thought about doing the whole tips and tricks thing. We talked before about search stuff, and because I do a lot of consulting, every so often I see the things that a lot of devs don't know about, and the main ones for me that jumped out were things like just using the search tools efficiently and learning about all the Control K shortcuts and all those kinds of things. But then I thought we cover a lot of those kinds of things in the various shows we do, so that feels like treading similar ground. So I didn't want to do that precisely because we can always do more videos on those. So I thought, what do I get asked about a lot that I haven't really done a detailed video on? And I was broadly thinking about the topic of saving. So saving comes up a lot, whether it's what file formats do I save in, where should I save things, that kind of stuff. And I've mentioned before how I think that's the wrong question. So without going down a whole big rabbit hole, the general idea is there's a very interesting relationship between data generation, data saving, caching, persistence, searching, and all of those different parts. And I thought, what better than a good example of I've grabbed a data source online, so I've basically got a huge data set of all the Pokemon, and I'm going to real-time demonstrate generating data, saving it, creating automatic caching, doing all the stuff to do searches through that, then efficiently improving the search features, that kind of stuff. The general takeaway should be that a lot of people ask the question, what format should I save in? But the fact of the matter is you should be able to press a button and toggle between CSV or JSON or XML, and it shouldn't make a difference. That's irrelevant. It's a median format for what you're doing. The important things about are usage. And so a couple of things I want to touch on will be things like writing your own custom JSON converters to decrease file sizes, and how to use repository patterns to put intermediary wrappers to add caching in between access. So rather than, if you wanted to get a Pokemon from a list, you could say, get me this Pokemon. If you happen to have stored it locally, it'll return that one. If not, it'll go to the web, grab the one that you're missing, add it to your local cache repository, and then next time you save it out of the save file, and it'll all do this seamlessly in the background. So yeah, it seems like a very broad topic, but I kind of realized that when we talk about saving, a lot of people kind of stop and start at either player prefs or binary serializer. And it occurs to me that the reason why is a lot of people don't know the differences between what is caching, what is a repository pattern, how does a unit of work pattern work. And I'm not going to cover all of those things, but I'm hoping to at least open the door a little bit in that direction. And I think there's enough there that there should be an interesting discussion post-presentation about all the different areas you could go down further this rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's a lot to fit into that time. I mean, if anybody could do it, I'm sure you can. I think it'll be interesting, and it's definitely something that I think needs to be in most games. Speaking of saving and loading systems, I don't want to call you out, but I was playing and I couldn't save my game yet. So have you, is this something you've been thinking about with streaming?
Yeah, I have a save and loading system working. I'm actually using an asset called Easy Save 3. It was not so easy to set up, but once I got the hang of it, it's actually pretty useful, and it does save to, I think it can do various formats. Like you said, you can choose JSON or whatever else. I just didn't put it in the demo because it's a demo. And to be honest, I didn't want there's some like full game stuff connected to the saving, and I didn't want it to like mess around with that. So it's like, we'll just keep it simple. You play it once for the demo, and then the main game will have the proper saving.
And that actually brings up.
Did you find it easy?
That brings up a good point too. That when I'm talking saving, to be really clear, there's like 3 layers of this that a lot of people miss. Like, how do you actually take all the data that's disproportionately spread across your application and build a save structure? That is one question that is completely unrelated to, once you have that data structure, where do I save it? How do I save it? What format? And blah blah blah. So I can totally relate to the fact that even if you had the perfect magic button that saved a file to disk, that's like 20% of the problem. And so there's a lot more. I'm only going to be covering that 20%, but I'm going to be covering it in depth. But there is certainly more scope in the, like, how do you actually build that tree structure of your save data and everything else?
Yeah, it's a lot to saving.
It's a great topic, though, because not all games need to save, but a lot of games need to save. And I know for me, I got screwed big time by reading the forums and hearing that player prefs was the way to save RPG data. So, you know, it's a near and dear to my heart, new knowledge on saving.
So you're saying there's a different way?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I'm pretty sure there's a different way. And it's not player prefs. Don't use player prefs for saving your RPG data.
It's binary formatter, right, Jason?
Don't do that to me. Don't do that. I did the research. It's actually kind of fun when you kind of. I can't help it. Every time I'm about to do any topic, I will go on a huge bender and watch like 100 videos on YouTube of everyone else doing it and finding out what people say. And now, to be fair, a lot of them are older videos. It's only in the last 4 years or 3 years that Microsoft have officially said, please stop using this. No, please. It's even in our documentation. Don't do this anymore. But a lot of older stuff still recommends doing that. I would say, though, as a fun note to your point, Andrew, something I want to touch on, but again, I'm trying to fit how much of this I can fit into a talk. A good example, like I picked Pokemon as an example, right? A single Pokemon has a buttload of stats associated with it. You're talking it's the type, the weaknesses, the whatever else that goes with it. But if you were storing an inventory of like, these are the 5 I have currently selected, how much of that information do you need to include in the save file? And the truth of the matter is, you only really need to store the IDs. And so the trick that I kind of want to demonstrate, hopefully, I'm actually writing the code for it at the moment, so I'm trying to figure out how to demonstrate this efficiently. But for example, if you stored 4 IDs, just to like ID the Pokemon, and you loaded it up, what you can do is you can save all that data, but you don't save it in the save file. You save it in a local cache file for the project. So what I mean is, I could say, there's no save data at all. I could say, get me 5 Pokemon from the internet. These are the ones you've picked to put in your inventory. And then I save all of those to a cache of all of the like detailed descriptions of all the Pokemon. Then I save to your save file 4 numbers. And so when the time comes to resolve all of that back in, you just read the 4 numbers, compare it against the cache file, reload that data in. And so the benefit of doing that means the actual persisted data in the save file is literally 4 numbers. It is not the stacked collection of stuff that's repeated data that doesn't really need to be inside the save file. And the trick to it is that's very confusing to think about doing if you're doing it manually. But if you use a combination of repository patterns and things, it's actually seamless. You don't actually think about doing it because there's like a waterfalling of get me thing. Oh, I don't have all the things. Resolve the rest of the data, pass the next thing. And at the very end, you just say get me things. And whatever happens to happen along the process will kind of do that for you. So to your point, Andrew, when you think about inventories of items of stuff, a lot of the hang-ups around loading and issues and struggles tend to come from loading a giant array which contains textures and images and ID, even if it's just URL images and that kind of stuff, when realistically, all of that data does need to be in your app, but it doesn't need to be in the save file. It just needs to be the sword with this stat, and then everything can be kind of magicked somewhere else. So keeping like a secondary cache of related save data that's doesn't change, that's immutable, is usually a good way to help solve that.
Yeah, the way I think about it is anything that's unique to the character, the player's data, needs to be saved. If it's not unique, it doesn't need to be saved. You just need a reference at that point, some way of looking it up. And IDs work great for that.
Yeah, what does your save system look like in Strain? You said it's in the core game. Are you saving just like the inventory and the quest progress, or and then like obviously like all the current stats?
Yeah, I mean, I am doing those things. It's actually kind of complicated because I do have a really complicated dialogue system where there's all kinds of like, which things have like, what's the relation with different characters? What's your faction reputation? I also have objects that can be picked up and dropped anywhere in the world. So saving that was probably the biggest thing, and then having them like respawn without crazy load times. And then there's the combat, and so like enemies throughout the world and where they've spawned. And I also am like resetting things too. So, if you go out and you find an object and you drop it, there was a question of, if you come back out the next day, should that object still be there? How long should it be there? If you can just stash everything outside, what's the point, right? I had to think about these things. So some things get reset, some things do save, some things don't save, some things have to have like how long there's being reset until they get reset. So I actually, and I recently put in, you can build things now in the current version, like anywhere, and you can also like punch them or hit them to break them down. And then if you punch them and hit them, it's like, I think I have right now, it's 20 seconds before it goes back to normal. If you start hitting it and it doesn't get broken down. And that was like a question, like, should I save how much destruction there is? So there's all these little things, but a lot of things you actually don't need to save. I don't think you need to save how much destruction you've done, for example, or if things are getting reset, why save them at all? Stuff like that. Well, that was a trickier one, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. So you said the hardest part was saving like all of the placed items, you think, like just the new positions, and it was more just getting them to respawn properly and like reinitialize and get into the state? Or how did you go about fixing that? Or what was that process?
The trickiest process was, it's different. I've changed it since, but I have like your home base where there's items in that room that have one sort of setting. Then there's items in your home, and then there's items in the world. And so when raiders come in, and then there's items in your storage unit. So when raiders come in, if they find an item in your home, they'll take that and leave. But if they don't find something along the way, they're going to go to your storage. So there was these complexities of where exactly in the world each item is getting dropped, and whether or not to save or reset those on new days and on and on reloads. So that was complicated, but also the characters are getting spawned in different places every day, and they have different like kind of events attached to them. So I think the characters as well as the items were both complex to do.
Sorry to keep going on this, but on the characters part, just curious, in the days, because it's very story and day based. How did you set that up? What does that data look like? Is it just like there's a day and there's a setup state for every character? Is that each character just has like on the next day it switches to this new position and this new dialogue, or what? I'm just kind of curious what the data structure and the setup for that looks like.
Yeah. I have it so I was considering doing it like time-based, but I decided to keep it simple and straightforward for both me and the player. Basically, everything gets reset when you sleep. So, and then there's some things that it gets reset on the next day and asleep. So yeah, it's mostly sleep-based to keep it simple. That way I don't have to animate people coming and going. I don't have to animate things like randomly disappearing. It's just happening magically when you're sleeping.
It's all when they sleep. And then does that just kicking off like triggers that are progressing the state of some of the characters outside then and in the world outside? Like when you sleep and it's day 2 or day 3 or whatever, it switches some stuff out there?
Yeah, I think I just call it delegate, and then anything that's like reset on new day, it's just doing that, I think is what I've got going on.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Cool. Oh, sorry. I didn't just ask a ton of questions about it, but I was playing and just had a lot of things I was thinking about. And I've been thinking about putting together like a single player RPG and streaming it myself sometime soon. I just really want to build one, and I think that the only way I'll ever do it is if I actually stream it. So I kind of want to copy what you're doing. A totally different type of game and stuff, but yeah, I kind of want to do something similar. So I'm gonna have lots of questions.
I'm sure.
Anyway, so there were a couple other things that I wanted to make sure to talk about today. One was a game that Yorai shared, but if Yorai is not here, we can wait until next week, I guess. And the other one was about the Tetris movie, and I'm just curious if anybody else actually saw that movie. I watched it a couple days ago, and it kind of surprised and shocked me. It was not what I expected, I guess. So, did anybody else see it?
No, I've heard it's really good.
Yeah, I saw it also.
Story?
Not yet. It's literally, I have it. Like I have, I use a media service called MB as my media host thing, and it's like it's looking at me. I haven't quite gotten around to it just yet. For some reason I decided to rewatch all of The Simpsons, and so I went back and watched a few seasons of that, and I haven't gotten around to my movies list just yet. So.
All of The Simpsons, like.
Well, all the ones I missed, which turned out to be like 9 seasons, which is a lot.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's been going for like what, almost 30 seasons.
It's not like 33 now or something. So yeah, it's a bit nuts.
Oh wow. Yeah. What about you, Andrew? Have
you know, I didn't have a TV for 2 years almost. I have a TV now, and one day late last week, I decided to eat dinner while watching TV rather than watching YouTube right here, and that was a mistake. So I ended up watching all of Severance, and I ended up watching all of Extrapolations that they have released so far. And then the other night I watched Top Gun 2, which I enjoyed thoroughly. All of them I've enjoyed, although Extrapolations is very depressing. But I have not yet watched Tetris. It is also staring at me, though. When I turn on the TV, it is there. And I need to not watch TV, though, because it keeps me from doing the fun shit, you know?
Well, in that case, I will wait and we can just talk about it next week so that I don't spoil it. but it was definitely if you've been thinking about watching it, it was worth watching. It was interesting. It was video game related, and it was surprising. It was not what I expected at all. I expected it to just be a movie about the development of it, and it was
Well, I hope.
I'm not going to
Yeah,
spoil
don't
it.
spoil it. I just
watch
hope that in the end everything falls into place.
Well, yeah, basically. You've seen the end result. It's a good one. Severance was amazing too.
Yeah, I like Severance. It's good.
Yeah, that was definitely good.
Definitely one of my favorite shows of the last few
and-
years. Severance is actually, I like a show that's actually got something sort of, it's got a clever premise that's slightly different than the usual, and that one caught me off guard.
Yeah, there's a lot of TV shows that I like. I feel like I want to just make a YouTube channel about TV shows that I like, but I don't think anybody would actually watch it. Just me talking about stupid sci-fi shit that I like to watch. So let's move on. There are a couple other things to talk about. I don't remember what they were anymore though. Pal, you remember what else we were going to talk about today?
I think that most was also you wanted to code architecture and the GenoKids. GenoKids we are moving, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. GenoKids will move, and code architecture. That was the other one that I'm going to talk about, especially if Story was here. So tomorrow we're going to have a roundtable at the GameDev Guild pre-show event on code architecture, and I just kind of wanted to briefly kind of pick your brain on your latest thoughts on what code architecture is and means, especially with all of the Twitter battles and the Uncle Bob versus Casey battles on and all that stuff that have been going on.
That was interesting, all right. And yes, I read the entire Markdown thing on GitHub, which is the most programmer thing.
Oh yeah, I read that whole thing too. read through all of their tweets back and forth, and I have some thoughts on it, but I'm really curious about yours.
I'll be honest. So in this day and age, you're always worried about if stuff's real anymore. So when I hear a conversation between Casey and Uncle Bob, I'm like, is it? And I had to double check. And to be honest, having seen enough content from both of them, I was pretty confident that it sounded just like them. It's like, yeah, this is... Now, to be fair, if I wrote a bot that was both of them, they said roughly what I imagined both of them would say in response to each other. So I don't know if that proves they're human or not. But either way, it seems accurate.
Sorry, before you go on, would you guys be able to update us on what it is that you guys are commenting on?
Yes.
That's a good idea.
It's a good point. Probably actually describe it.
I've talked to him about this so many times, I forgot that. Yeah.
So I guess broadly speaking, there is one of the biggest names in software, specifically in object-oriented side of it, is Bob Martin, or Uncle Bob, as he goes by the name of, and he's pretty synonymous with clean code and helped coin the phrase solid principles and everything else. There's a growing movement in the likes of Jonathan Blow and Casey, who a number of other developers who are very much looking at the current state of software and going, you guys are writing really slow code. All of this clean code nonsense is making everything slow and tedious. And why is it that a terminal application or a notepad application could open really fast back in really early machines, but yet now we have a million times X processing speed and everything's really slow to even open an image editor? It's a perfectly reasonable kind of comment to make. And so the question becomes why? And long story short, there's been ongoing debates back and forth for years, and two of the biggest names in this space clashed very recently. Casey/Molly Rocket's YouTube channel, and Uncle Bob being the kind of the clean code guy. And so it was basically a back and forth of them going, explain to me your perspective on this so we can figure out where we lie. I'm normally someone who leans more in the clean code side, but I do respect the arguments from the performance side of it. And so the general summary of the whole thing, from my perspective, boils down to Bob speaks in more abstracts. He's basically at a point in his life where he's like, I've worked in a lot of companies and I try to see things from the perspective of delivering software. Casey works more in the metal, thinking more in perspective of speed and cycles and actual sort of production and use. They're both good perspectives, but it kind of comes down to where do you sit on it. And from my perspective, I've seen enough companies fail, not because the code wasn't fast enough, but because of failure of management and understanding and that kind of thing, that if there's a trade-offs to be made. I don't mind losing cycles for the sake of actually getting stuff delivered and done. Although again, Casey would argue with me on that and disagree with me because I lean more towards the Bob perspective. But it's an interesting debate. The long story short, it's worth looking into. And I do recommend if someone wants to weigh in on this, try not to just lean into one camp or the other. Actually do your research. If you want to know about the performance side, if you don't know what SIMD means, don't comment on the performance side of it. And if you don't know what solid principles are and can actually explain them in practical use, don't argue from that side either. If you can do both, then you can have a fair comment on both sides. But I've noticed a lot of it has been very inside baseball. People are just commenting from like, well, your side is wrong, but they don't actually understand what the other side is. It gets a bit tedious, but it brings up interesting discussions, I guess.
Cool.
And your current thoughts now? Where you lay? You're saying you're still more on the clean code side?
I think I've fallen back a bit from the clean code side because I do realize that there is a point to be made where you, because I came from enterprise, I came from code must work first, and so you can have as many layers as you like as long as it can be validated, tested, and ran. But Casey's coming from the game side, which is all about speed, performance, and that's way more important because if a game breaks, nobody loses money. If an app breaks, people might lose actual livelihoods and whatever. So there is a different side, and I've always come from the enterprise side, and so I was biased in that direction. And it took me a while now, being in games for X number of years, that I'm like, okay, I need to balance the equation more. So the short answer is I'm a bit more willing to play that side of it, and I've been cutting out more and more layers of abstraction as I go. But to be brutally honest, I think I've been doing both sides long enough. I have the experience to know when to cut the boundaries. A lot of people, though, if you go into this with the debate side of it, you think it's all or nothing. A lot of people are saying, oh, abstraction makes things slow, but no abstraction makes things fast. But that's actually part of the impetus for my talk I'm going to give on that in the GameDev Guild, is I want to demonstrate how I can add an abstraction layer, which is a repository pattern, and make things faster by adding a caching layer that is seamlessly hidden in between the layers of reading files, right? So it's not one or the other. It comes down to how much you understand both parts of the problem. So my short answer is I still think abstraction is more valuable than the current generation says it is, but I do think it has to be reevaluated based on where technology is going. So
interesting. Anybody else got thoughts on this? I'm sure you guys do.
I can't argue either side per Jason's guidelines. However, I can say as a user of things on the computer from time to time, it is remarkable how slow things can be, especially simple things or something that seems so simple, but the computers are so much faster, but they're always just as slow as they ever were. Part of that's probably also our perspective, because you get used to something taking so long and you don't realize when, they do load up a lot faster than they did in the 90s, the computers. I remember it used to take like 4 minutes to load up my Mac at one point. So they're faster now.
Yeah. Now they turn on instantly, though that's probably largely just hardware.
Well,
it's the solid state drives.
There is also the revisionism problem, right? Which is, you could say, if I want to draw a cube to the screen, I can draw a cube to the screen. Drawing a cube to the screen 40 years ago versus now is roughly the same thing. It's still triangles, drawing colors and whatever. It's like, yeah, but now we're drawing it using ray tracing. Like, you can't just hand wave and say, I still drew a rectangle. It's like, no, now we're doing it by firing tons of rays, doing calculations, generating tons of information. So a lot of these problems boils down to, why is Photoshop slower now than it used to be? Because it runs literal giant AI algorithms to process images in ways that you couldn't even dream of before. That's not a free pass, and I think there's a fine argument to be made for why does it take a long time to load an app where you haven't even picked a menu item yet? It should open instantly because you've not done anything until you load an image. It doesn't take very much performance to load a single image onto screen when you click a button. The fact that you have to load the entire engine before you can even pick something, that is a fair argument to be made. But when it comes to the overall scale and scope argument, I do think that's a silly one. You can't compare it used to be faster back in the day when computers were quicker. It's like, yeah, because they were doing far less work, like orders of magnitude less work they were doing.
Yeah, I think the one that stands out for me, the only thing that's really gotten slower is Unity. Like the editor, and I don't know, my guess there is that it's largely from getting distributed so much and getting split among so many teams and then becoming all packagized. I'm sure that's added a bunch of slowness. Hopefully, with 23, it gets faster. In games, though, I kind of lean towards you. Pal, are you muted?
No, I just didn't want it to have a problem. Yeah. So can I get onto the topic for a second? Yeah. I'm coming from a little different side right now, because when I worked on enterprise, when I worked for space industry and so on, I was closer to what Jason was saying and was closer to the clean code side. Yeah. Like now, I think I'm more in the middle because I'm working on assets. Yeah. I'm sending code to thousands of people who will use it in their own projects, from small games to big enterprise projects and so on. Yeah, and when I'm creating something, I always have to think about three things. First thing is that it's easy to use and everybody can use it. From a junior developer who first opened Unity, downloaded my assets and wants to do something from it. Yeah. Second thing is that when some better developer takes it and uses it into his project, it has to be clean enough and easy to read enough that he can take the APIs, take the code, and work on it, and it won't break his game or delete his game when he clicks a button in it.
It's certainly nice.
I saw assets which done that. And to be truthful, one of my assets did it because of Unity's update of folder structure. I think it was when it moved from 4 to 5. There was some change in reading that folders, and if you read them wrong side, it just destroyed your project. Yeah, deleted all the files. Yeah, so
Nice.
I always check for it. And third thing is it has to work fast. Yeah. For example, if we are creating rivers, I will go to Lava and RAM as we are working on it right now. It has to be creating a mesh that has thousands of triangles in matters of milliseconds. Yeah, even faster if somebody does it on a better computer. Yeah. So for me, it's always hard work getting middle of these three things. Yeah, making it clean code. But as I'm making assets, not entire project, the clean code has to be able to work with other assets and has to be able to be changed easily by others. So if I give it to someone who doesn't know patterns, and there's lots of patterns, then I'm giving him additional level of magnitude to learn before he can use this code. Yeah. So this code has
I've
to
always
use
hated that. That used to happen to me all the time. I don't want to interrupt, but that happened to me all the time when I was like a junior dev, and I would grab some library, and then that library, a lot of time they weren't game ones. It'd be like enterprise libraries, and they were using some pattern I hadn't seen before, and I have to go try to figure out how the hell this thing worked, and miss some little hookup to make it actually work, and then spend like a day or two tracking it down, especially if there were no good examples. So,
I noticed that with data sources. Used to be really infuriating.
Yeah.
Because you used to do the same kind of thing with WinForm type stuff. These stupid WinForm libraries where they had like a graph renderer and you had to instantiate 5 objects in a row to pass into the renderer, so it had it's like, just let me send it some objects. Like, I understand programmatically what you're doing, but that should be an option for people who want to override things, not the default. I have to engage with this nonsense pattern and practices, because that's the other thing too. Patterns solve two purposes. They make the code easier to extend, but they also make it easier to use. If you're exposing all of that complexity to a user, you're doing it wrong. Like, you shouldn't force somebody to engage with all of this nonsense.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, Paul, you were saying?
Yeah, so for me, the biggest, I think, when I stand it and when I look at it, I mostly try to look at it, what's the purpose of the project and what's the purpose of the code that's going to use. Yeah. So if I'm creating application for the space industry, I would go with clean code. It has to be clean. It has to be tested so many times that it will maybe run slower, but it will not break a piece of hardware that is worth more than $1 million. Yeah. If I'm making a quick game that's just quick game for kids that want to have fun, then I will go more with speed, because a small child that's 5 years old, if he clicks and it doesn't do something on screen without milliseconds, this kid will tell me it's broken. Yeah, so I will go more to the working side rather than clean code side. only if this game is going to be working for about half a year to a year being sold. If this game will be some game that will be sold for 5 years, now I'm moving back to the clean code. So I'm always looking in this type of debacle. What is the purpose of what I'm doing? What is the purpose of the code I'm writing? Yeah. Because if I'm writing some library for, let's say, LOD system that goes to the compute shader, then clean code is less relevant than this shader working in the parts of milliseconds each frame. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So
that library level stuff, it's
yeah.
got like
So for
speed
me,
is number one, and then usability number two, and
yeah,
then
exactly.
your maintainability is number three. Landit, your game's totally different. You don't have to worry about other people using your code at all. You just have to kind of optimize and build around whatever works best for you. So where do you kind of fall on this? Do you worry a lot about like design patterns and code stuff, or do you worry more about performance and optimization? You find yourself in the profiler a lot, or refactoring code more, or where does it go with your actual like real life game process that you're working on right now?
I guess with my current project, thanks for asking. My current project is like you said, it's just me in the code. So I only need to make it as clean as I want to see it later, right? If I make it too confusing for myself in the future, that's my own problem, and I don't have to worry about other people looking at it and stuff. But I think overall, like even outside of this project, I think like, you know, the ideal thing is usability, whether it's clean code or whether it's a platform or something, shouldn't come at the cost of performance. So like making Strain, for example, I'm using Unity. If I made it without a game engine, could I make it more performant? Maybe, but I don't know. You know, like that's a huge cost of usability to gain performance. Ideally, there isn't a loss of performance by using a game engine, right? There isn't a loss of performance by using clean code, but I understand that's like an idealism, and like I'm not doing the stuff Pavel's doing, so I don't have to worry about the things that you brought up, luckily. But I think that's something to strive for at the very least.
Yeah, and I don't know how your game actually performs because I ran it on hardware that's probably too powerful to see anything. But did you actually run into performance issues with the game? Do you have to go in and profile regularly? Or you like, is that some like part of your normal process to just kind of optimize and keep things running good on whatever your target system is?
Yeah, performance is a kind of a major thing I have to be kind of creative with, because some of the more traditional things you would do for performance are not really available with the setup I have, because I'm doing a lot of like randomly generated things, whether it's the city is randomly generated. That's probably the biggest one. So like
ruins all your static caching stuff, and you have to go through a lot of frustrating.
Exactly. So I have to come up with some creative solutions. Luckily, there's some assets that are going to help me with that. With the demo, it's static, so that was a little bit easier. I didn't have to get into too deep into that yet. But it is still something I did a lot of testing before, and like once I put it out, there was a lot of feedback. Yeah, it's definitely something I have to put a lot of time into and regularly. And I'm doing like kind of a more realistic art style, so it's like it's painful. It's painful to get things to look good and to be, optimized.
Yeah, it's certainly not one of my skills, like making stuff. Well, especially making things look good. I can optimize stuff a bit, but not make them look pretty. I like the set dressing you've got on all of the different scenes and the cinematics. They're kind of really well done with the backgrounds and stuff behind the characters. And I was going to ask, I think the last thing I was curious about on there was how you seem to have like a lot of cinematics throughout the game. Did you just use Timeline and Cinemachine for that, or use some other setup? Did you build your own like custom setup? It seems like almost everywhere you go, like you pop into a cinematic that shows a cool little intro to the thing, and then it goes over to some dialogue.
Yeah, it's I'm realizing that was one of the biggest takeaways from putting the demo out, is how much work goes into making like the story part of a game versus, the whole survival side of it was actually like very easy to make a survival game, but to make like the story added into it took so much time, like the voice acting, the animations, the cinematics you're describing. that is so much more work than like you can foresee, because you do have to make little changes along the way when there's like a little difference of something you need to depict, right? So I do have like this is part of why the dialogue system is so complex. I have different ways of beginning a conversation, and one of them has a sort of standard like cinematic built in almost, where I have like different Cinemachine cameras like that will switch during the conversation. So like when I'm typing out the script of what people are saying, I have like switch to camera 3 in the script, and then it will do that with the dialogue system, and I don't have to keep like messing around with timeline for every single separate conversation. And then I just set up like, you know, when I'm talking to one character, there's a camera here, like you can't see. There's like a camera here, then there's a camera over here, and it can just kind of like swap around, and it feels like things are happening without having to build it differently for each one. With that said, some cutscenes did take some extra like breaking of that system to make it look right.
Are you using a pre-built dialogue system, or did you make your own?
Made my own, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're pretty easy to build, but there's some interesting ones out there. I don't know if you were using one of those. So that's cool. Did you find it pretty simple to build and like a little bit easier to use, or was it a pain in the ass? And
it's been an ongoing part of the game that I've been changing and moving around. There are some good pre-made ones I have done used in game jams, but I think it was easiest to just build it from scratch because there was so many elements that I knew I needed to implement that are custom, like I mentioned, the Cinemachine stuff. And in trying to like break down an existing one and then factor that in might have been challenging, and finding one to do everything I needed would have been challenging for me to just make my own and know how it works so I can like move it around when I want to and change things the way I want to. I think that was actually the best approach. It was probably pretty easy to get the basics working, and I've actually done jams where getting a basic dialogue system was straightforward. But it's once you have all these other moving pieces, it starts getting complex and like kind of painful to work with.
Wait, you're saying you haven't supported localization for 500 different languages yet? No.
I actually built it with localization in mind. That's why I had like separate JSON files for the dialogue scripts. But because I'm doing all these camera things, like if I do send it off to like a translator, they're going to have to be like, okay, cam 3, I leave. That's not part of the dialogue. And like emotion number 4 and like animation number 7, like stuff like that is in with the dialogue system. So that could definitely be improved if I did want to do better localization, but it's kind of is built in actually.
You gotta have ChatGPT do the localization for you.
You know?
Just paste it in and see if it can give you back all the different languages.
I wonder. It'd be interesting.
Andrew, you building an RPG too. What did you do for cinematics and dialogue?
So I haven't yet done cinematics, but my plan is to just use Cinemachine. And actually, my plan is to use Cinemachine for the main character's camera as well, with the player camera as well, just so to make it blend more easily. That's my understanding, is it blends very nicely if you use it for both. That's the goal. For dialogue, I'm actually at an impasse at the moment. So I'm of course using the game modules, my tool for my own game, and I'm working on quests and finishing up the big overhaul of this. It doesn't include dialogue, but during GDC, I was able to meet up with Tony Lee from Pixel Crushers, who makes dialogue system for Unity. So I may end up basically using his tool, because dialogue system for Unity has been around for a long time. It's extremely robust. People love using it. It's used in many ship titles that people have heard of. So I think it might be, in this case, better to just not reinvent the wheel and to instead integrate game modules with dialogue system for Unity and use that for dialogue. Because for simple dialogue, actually for the game modules demo that I'm working on, I made a very, very simple dialogue system. Has a little bit of a tree structure, nothing fancy. But I think, dialogue can be very complex when it comes to RPGs. When it comes to, hey, this NPC needs to know if you've done something else in the world. Have you solved this quest? Do you have this certain armor on? And how will they react if you have a certain bit of armor on that they happen to be looking for, but they won't tell you they're looking for it because it's secret until suddenly you're wearing it and then they act differently. And so there's a lot of complexity when it comes to an RPG, I think, that I just don't want to do myself, you know?
Is that the kind of stuff that you had to put into yours, like those conditions and triggers for, if you've got these items? I assume you did. Like, it's kind of tied in with the quest system. Is that how does that work? Can you just explain that to everybody real quick? Sorry, I've got it in my head, but I'm thinking like, for instance, you've got the quest where you've got to go bake some bread. Like, how does that work with the dialogue when you wait to bring it back? What's the trigger setup for that, and how do you build something like that?
So just to give you a little bit, just to go back a little bit to come into this, I was planning the Kickstarter for about a year in advance, and I was sitting down and talking with people who had done Kickstarters before and getting advice. And about 2 months before, I was like, I have to launch the Kickstarter now. I've been like, that's not a good time. That's not a good time. I'm like, January, it's got to happen. So I'm like, I'm 2 months away, and I'm realizing everyone's like, you need to put a demo out because nobody knows what they're backing unless there's a demo. So I'm like, okay, I've got 2 months. I've got a pretty functioning main game. I'm going to take this main game and make a demo out of it. I already have like all of the systems in place. I just need to make it into a little contained story and make it look good. And so I took the main game and put it into this like new package with like a little standalone story that's kind of like a prequel to the main game. However, there were challenges with that because my quest system, as an example, and probably the biggest thing was the quest system. In the main game, I'm changing it since the demo, I think, but similar to how it was in the main game. Basically, you have a reputation system with the factions, and each of the faction members from the factions will give you a certain number of quests up until you like rank up in that faction. So when you haven't joined, they each have 5 different quests. It's basically go find this item, whether you need to craft it, build it, do whatever to get the item, return it to them. Great. Just some conversation. Next quest if you go back to them. And there's a new quest that you can get each day if you complete it. And so that was very like systematic and straightforward, and it was a pretty simple quest system. But when I tried to refit it to the demo, when it's a more like, now you're meeting this character and she has a quest and you can't start the other one until you've completed this quest. So now there's like a whole new thing that I'm trying to fit into this, what was previously like a little more of an organized system. So that's when it started getting a little bit more complicated. And to be honest, like it was a little bit messy, and I have some stuff just for the demo that's like a little bit messier, but the main game is like a little bit more straightforward. It's like rank 0, rank 1, rank 2, rank 3. It's easy.
Okay, and you're just kind of keeping track of what their like faction score is with each different faction. They got just a value for each one, and you store that. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. It sounds like a lot of the RPGs and MMOs, like very standard way to kind of set that up. Yeah. Make a faction. Do you just make like a faction scriptable object and assign it to the NPCs then, or?
No, I probably should use scriptable objects, but I'm using a controller for the quests, and then I check the character's rank. To be honest, I'm not sure offhand exactly how it's set up, but yeah.
Just curious. I start coding in my head when we start talking about these systems, and it just kind of pops in. Jason, you got thoughts on this stuff?
Yeah, it actually.
You seem to be thinking.
I was thinking how much it dovetails with the previous conversation, because something that is interesting with building a system like this. A lot of people get caught up in the whole performance side of it, but there's actually another side to learning the nuts and bolts of how it works, which comes up to what you're describing, which is sometimes you get logical problems or architectural ones, like how do I make sure this thing happens before this? Or if I have a list of tasks and then a priority order shifts and something else has to happen before something else, how do I do that? We're not talking about performance really, but we are talking about data structures. And what's kind of interesting is if you do the sort of the classic training portion and go back and learn the differences between arrays and stacks and lists and queues and linked lists and all the other stuff, you'll realize that some of those problems are almost inbuilt and baked into the solutions picked. So as a small example, and I think Andrew can relate to this because when we talked about trees, I'm sure some stuff became easier as a result of trees versus lists because you don't have to do nested lists of all sorts of stuff. A similar one is stacks versus heaps. So I think I mentioned before, people have talked about stack and heap as these two magical constructs in your C#, the things that are like the local variables versus the kind of more reference variables. But people don't really know what they are. Like, what is a stack? What is a heap? Well, the stack is more simple. People are familiar with the idea that a stack is like stacks of dishes. You put stuff on top and you take one off the stack. But people don't really know what a heap is. Well, what's interesting about a heap is a data structure wise, heap is basically a thing that's like a stack, only instead of taking the one that was last added from the top, you take the one with the highest priority. So long story short, there's a data structure, a type literally built for the problem solving of I need to put stuff in some collection, and then the thing with the highest priority has to come out first. There's something called a heap, which is a thing you can make, which like does that. You don't have to write code to figure that out. You can just say make heap, put stuff in heap, get me thing from heap. And it heap, by the nature of how it works in memory, it stores things based on priority order. So all of that's just to say that a lot of these things, when we talk about trees and data structures and whatever, algorithmically, they're quite simple when you boil it down to like, how do you put something in an array? You're just moving stuff. You like take one out, put one here, but you have to do all the magic of like copy a thing, paste a thing, do whatever. But if you understand the plumbing of how that works, a lot of these other problems sort of get layered on top of it. So I guess that's what came to mind, is because I had a similar problem. I remember when I first tried to write my own stat system and my own quest system, and I probably spent 2 weeks with a notepad in a coffee shop pulling my hair out, going that if I need this and then this happens first, and I have to cancel that, and I was just like driving myself insane. And then I had to just give up from it because I was going to just strangle myself. And so I ended up leaving and then learning about just algorithm stuff, and I came back and went, oh, that's how you do this. It's just like there's this like breath of fresh air when you realize that, you know, if you have commands, put them in a command stack, or you know, and then if you have tasks that need to be done, you queue them up literally in a queue. And then if you have something which is like quests that have to be done in certain priorities, you could put them in a heap to do that. And then also, yeah, priority queue is the other one. And then as you're doing that, if you, for example, something cancels a quest, you can put it onto the stack and then because of the ordering, it'll automatically move the cancel first. And there's like, basically there's data structure ways to do this. And it's kind of like, it was fun to know that I didn't, because for a while you feel like you're drowning, you're trying to solve problems by yourself, and then when you kind of realize some of these things exist, but they kind of exist over in that performance area. They exist in the place where like you never have to learn them unless you're actively trying to min-max stuff, because they're how people move bits around more efficiently. So I guess to kind of circle around to your point originally, Jason, when you said what was your thoughts on this and the scale of performance versus sort of clean code, I think I'm biased because I knew those two things. I could make the decision about those. But I do think now, thinking about it more, if you didn't come from enterprise, you never had a reason to learn certain kinds of things. And if you came from games, you never had a reason to learn certain kinds of things. And I think learning data structures is pretty fundamental to problem solving, not to performance, but to like, if you understand the data structures, suddenly everything else above that will be easier for you to understand. So I think that sort of cycles around how it's all three topics. It's performance stuff isn't just for performance, it's for understanding how it works, which then makes subsequent problem solving a lot easier. And sorry, that's a bit of a random rant, but it just, all these topics are kind of intermining in my head, and they're kind of giving me interesting ideas.
Yeah, I wanted to pull up this priority queue class that was called out in chat too. This is somewhat what you're talking about, right, with the heaps.
Yeah, like
I actually have not used these.
Well,
so.
it's funny because a lot of these things are like, people don't realize they're built on top of each other. Like, and everyone knows array and they know list, but most people don't realize a list is actually an array. It's just an array that self-resizes onto the HUD. Like if you literally open list, inside of it is an array. Then there's other kinds of things called linked lists, which contains nodes of various things. And then beyond that point, you can make stacks and queues using linked lists as your underlying data structure. Now you don't need to, there's more efficient ways to do it, but you can. And then each of these things layer on top of each other to the point where a data structure uses another data structure to use a data structure to do different things until you end up with more complicated systems on top. And so these ones are just the inbuilt ones that you get with the Microsoft Collections library, but you can always write your own. And to circle it back to Andrew's stuff, it's like trees, right? Like there isn't a tree data structure in it, but you can make a tree. And realistically, a tree is not that hard. It is nodes in a collection, but if you can understand what it's doing, you can use it to do really complicated, cool stuff.
Yeah, I always learn something new when you're on here. This is awesome. Cool. Paul, you've been super quiet for a little while, so I'm curious what you're thinking here.
No, I'm just listening to the different approaches that you can use to create things like that. Yeah, because I think that what Jason said is especially interesting and valuable if you look at it when you're creating systems like that, and dialogue systems, quest systems, especially if they're interconnected. It's lots of data that you have to store and lots of variables that you have to look each second. And I think it mostly depends on type of game you're making. If you're making slower game, when you have lots of talking, when you can have lots of time doing stuff and checking it, it's okay. But if you're making hack and slash with quests, with additional information depending on the dialogues, then it's quite different, and you have to look again at the speed that you want to do. Then you have to move to the heaps, to the stacks, and check how they work.
Yeah, in my experience so far, at least, the quest data and that stuff tends to be the least thing, one of the few things I worry least about with performance. And unless there's like some like terrible issue there, just because it ends up not being that much relative to all of the other stuff that's going on. Just dealing with like items tends to be a way bigger issue because you have way more items than quests and even dialogue the majority of the time. And again, this is mostly just me thinking of MMO stuff, and like every time there was an issue, it's either item related or customization related because they allow for user customization stuff, and that would always break all kinds of crap or kill performance. Even the built-in system that just allowed that killed performance. Not good stuff. Anyway, I was kind of curious, not to completely change the topic. I do want to talk more about clean code stuff, but I also just want to ask a little bit of advice to the two of you, Andrew and Lena, about streaming game development live. So I've done tons and tons of YouTube videos, and like where it's all pre-recorded or streams just talking about stuff. But one of the things I want to do next month is start streaming some game development, kind of like the two of you are, where actively you can going through building out a game and sharing stuff. Somebody asked if you streamline it. That's ridiculous. Let's put the I'll find the link up here. Right here. Yep, right on Twitch. There's the link. Go check it out. So I want to kind of do something similar. I've got an idea for a game that I've been wanting to build for, I don't know, forever, and I just never get around to doing it because there's always more important things to do and other things that I just kind of push it off. So I'm just going to make it happen, and I figure like I'm pretty sure I could do it in like 3 to 6 months and just get it done, and I may as well just do it. But I want to kind of do it right, and I want to get some advice from kind of pros who are already doing that regularly, and see if you guys have any just thoughts or things that you would recommend definitely doing while you're streaming or not doing, or things that went terribly wrong that you thought were going to be a great idea, or things that you're trying out. So if you get any advice or suggestions from either one of you, please let me know.
Well, the things that were the biggest, how do I put it? Learning curves for me were like the technical things, which you're going to have sorted out because you do YouTube already. But like when I first started, my audio quality was miserable, and people were like, "We can't understand what you're saying. Like, you need to get a new mic, and you keep cutting out on us. You need to get better internet." So like a lot of the technical stuff is definitely a learning curve for people who get into it. I don't think you're going to face those having done, not only YouTube, but these live streams as well. So you're familiar with that stuff. I don't know. Andrew, you got anything while I think about it?
I am nowhere near I do it, but I think my audience is very small. One of my things, and Lena, maybe you have some thoughts on this. I don't show my face during my streams. I know others do. A lot of other people do. And I have a feeling that's helpful. People like that sort of engagement. But most of the time I'm like probably just looking like, weird, and trying to figure things out. So my big thing is, I use it as it's kind of like a stream of consciousness. So I just talk throughout, and some of the time I'm pretty sure I'm alone, and I'm just talking to myself. And every once in a while somebody will interact with me, and every once in a while Jason will pop on and derail everything in a good way. But for the most part, it is I think My biggest thing is I need to figure out how to start showing my face and not looking goofy throughout the whole thing, because I'm actually trying to figure things out. And I do wonder, you know, some of the streamers I see, I wonder sometimes if they knew what they were going to do and they've already done it and they're just redoing it for the stream. Especially if they only stream like a certain amount of time every week. Versus me, where generally I'll be like, oh shit, I want to stream tonight, and it'll be last minute, and I'll be like, I'm working on this random thing. That's what I'm going to work on. And often I don't even work on that. I get derailed by myself. So I don't know. I'm not necessarily the best resource, but I enjoy doing it when I do it. Yeah.
To speak on the showing your face while you stream, I definitely recommend it. There's definitely days I'm like, I just want to like look like a bum. I don't want to show my face. But you know what? Like, as you get used to doing it and you build a connection with the people that are there regularly, like, honestly, you stop caring. Like, if I look like garbage one day, people are going to comment on it, yes. But you also get used to those comments. And there's a lot of times I'm making that face. I'm like, face palming. I look like so stressed out. And people are like, and are you okay? You look really depressed. It's like, no, I'm trying to solve a problem. Like, I'm just like thinking, or like, you look tired. It's like you get a lot of these comments and you do get like called out on stuff, but like you also get used to just not caring and like figuring out what to say. Yeah. So I think it's one of those hurdles that's worth just putting your camera on and start like getting used to it and learning it, because I think it will. Unfortunately, like I do think you do get a lot of a difference in audience if your camera's on or not. Yeah. So I do recommend using a camera. I've seen people who sometimes stream with and sometimes without, and I've noticed that their audience is lower when they don't have the camera on. I just always do it because I guess I just don't care. It's just put it on,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just don't worry either. I just always look like a mess, and it's fine. Then nobody has any high expectations, and then everybody recognizes you too. It was really weird at GDC. A Code Monkey standing right next to me, and nobody recognized him because he didn't put his face on camera ever. So everybody was trying to convince him to do it more. But I think he kind of liked the anonymity too, being able to kind of like hide out and tell all he had to do was talk though. The second you say anything at all, we're like, what? Turn their heads and instantly recognize his voice.
Yeah, he's got a recognizable voice.
What do you do about like downtime when you're doing these streams? So say you're like streaming. My thought, and also if anybody here, all four of you have any suggestions or thoughts on this, my thought was that I'll probably do like streaming for 3 or 4 hours at a time, 2 or 3 times a week, and then just do all of the coding while I'm streaming. And I'm going to cheat and have AI write most of the code for me. So I'm going to have AI write most of the code. I'm going to use tons of assets from the asset store and finish the entire thing as fast as humanly possible. And I'm not even going to worry too much about optimization. As long as it works fine on a 4090, I'm good. I can optimize it after. So yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure I'll probably end up doing some optimizing and things while streaming, but that was kind of my thought, was like do some schedule like that, but I know I'll have a good amount of downtime in between there. Like if I'm doing it for 4 hours straight, like I'm lazy, so I'm gonna have to take some breaks. So what do you do there, and how do you deal with that? And does that timeline sound stupid or reasonable? Or Story, could you make that game that fast?
No. I've said many times, I'm probably the slowest developer here. I just use a lot of tricks for speeding up in editor and things. So I look normal speed, but it's actually really slow type. Well, it's fast typing and fast shortcuts, but I'm actually typing like the ideas very slowly out. It just averages. So no, I'm really slow at the actual development cycle. There's loads of people I'm jealous of, like Taro, who's really fast at producing prototypes. I cannot do that. It's not in my skill set. I'm the kind of person who like sits and like stares at the screen and thinks about it for ages, then types really fast, but then stares at the screen for ages again. So yeah, I'm not a very fast developer.
I was really hoping you'd just be like, oh yeah, that sounds totally doable. So like, oh, okay, it would make me feel a lot better.
I can honestly say I'm deathly afraid of doing the live streaming code stuff. I've tried multiple times, but if, like, as Andrew pointed out, whenever he's streaming and I come on, I derail whatever he's doing, and he's not the only one. Whenever anybody is on a stream and I'm there, I go, hey, you could do a little thing here, and it's like, what's that? And I've derailed so many streams. But if you think that's bad, picture me trying to stream and people asking me questions in the chat every 30 seconds going, why'd you do it that way? What's that for? I never get work done. I literally, I keep
some theory lecture about
I keep stopping and doing impromptu lectures every 10 minutes.
In
Like,
the
okay, so let's
1980s.
yeah, so I cannot get work done when in fact, I can't even work with my Discord open with other people sending me messages. So if I'm getting work done, I will like shut off all of my communications. So streaming is a no-go. If I'm doing it to educate, fine. But if I'm doing it like to get work done, I will never ever stream. So
Okay. Well, sorry to interrupt my first question with another question. So thoughts on the streaming schedule and the just pauses and yeah. What's your current schedule too, if you don't mind?
Mine?
Yeah, your current. Andrew already said his is totally wild. Just decides to stream and puts on and starts streaming. So is yours? I assume is a lot more regular, right?
Yeah. So I'm seeing this comment from NinjaPuss. Hey Ninja, by the way. They're saying most game dev streamers know that real dev gets done off stream. I would say that doesn't apply to me. I stream like every day. So every single day, weekends included, not Mondays to Fridays, like weekends included, holidays. And I start around like 9ish in the morning and I just stream usually until the evening. So it's like the entire day. By the time I'm done streaming, I basically make something for dinner and then come back and do like, not the real dev, maybe something that's very like light thinking because I'm pretty much ready for bed like shortly after streaming. Maybe I'll have a call with a friend or something, but like it's very it doesn't leave time to do things outside of the stream. I can do the odd thing here and there off stream, but the majority of the work gets done on stream because I do stream for long hours. And you're thinking of doing a couple times a week, a few hours or time. That sounds great. I think if you can stick to a schedule, that's always like the tips people give. I don't really have a schedule because I find it's like, I don't want to get up in the morning and be like, oh my God, I'm late. Like, I've slept in. Like, that's what I want to be enjoying by working for myself, is not having to be like on some schedule. I want to be able to do things when I want to do them. Like I wake up in the morning, I'm like, like I feel rested and I can't wait to get started and go on stream. Like it's exciting to me. So I don't want to ruin that. So I don't have like a fixed schedule, but I'm just kind of, people know when and kind of roughly when they can find me. Kind of like this. It's not exactly at a time, but people kind of know sort of midday Fridays you do these.
Okay, so you've got kind of like set days and a loose kind of starting schedule. Or okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's probably pretty much exactly what I'll do. Because even if I set an exact schedule, there's zero chance that I'm gonna make it every time. I'll probably set an exact schedule and just do what I always do and not worry about if I miss the schedule. It's nice not having a boss.
Yeah.
On the real dev point too, I think it's worth mentioning that it's a muscle like anything else, right? I think back to my first ever videos I did at all, just any kind of recorded videos, which I will never show people because they're really embarrassing. But I did videos for way back in the VR days, and I'm just like, rabbit in the headlights, just afraid of being on camera. And it just made me think when I looked back at old videos compared to now, and I can see it. I can just see how naturally more comfortable I am on camera. And so the same thing goes, is that if you are trying to get work done and being aware that you're being watched by hundreds of people, it's going to rattle you at first. But the more you do it, the more. So I guess the general consensus when people say the real work gets done off screen, that's normally because you're not used to it. And then that panic is going to hit you hard when you're kind of second guessing it. Because I have one stream I ever did live, which was on the Infallible Code channel, where I was teaching a topic. And there's a moment in that stream where I lose my place in my code, and like I actually feel my heart skip a beat, and I'm actually like frozen for a second, going, I don't know what to say next. Everyone's watching me fail. This is horrible. No, it doesn't happen. Like I don't notice it now looking back, but I remember at the time feeling like I'm seconds away from just ripping the camera out and just running away. So it's kind of funny how it really does matter, right? And I do think that in Andrew's case, he's been doing it so long, he doesn't realize how impressive it is that it's like seamlessly just works on stuff, just passively doing stuff, and isn't bothered by the people coming in and out. Well, to me, that's constantly on my mind. So I do think practice makes perfect, as they say.
It helps that I do assume most of the time I'm by myself, and the ones who are showing up as viewers had just turned it on and they're doing other things as well. Mostly because I can't imagine actually working on my own stuff while watching or listening to somebody else work on their stuff. It's kind of like trying to count to 100 while somebody keeps yelling out various numbers. And so I assume that everyone's not really paying attention. Then they do pay attention, and that surprises me. So,
Some people pay a lot of attention. Some people are like, you missed a semicolon on line 372. And I'm like, how did you notice that?
That person is right next to you.
Yeah.
I appreciate those people as well.
Yeah. You asked about downtime, Jason. What did you mean by downtime?
Yeah, so if you're streaming throughout the day and you're doing it all day long and you want to go take a break for 15, 20, 30 minutes, go hop in your massage chair or something, what do you do with the stream? Do you just leave it running? Do you tell people, hey, I'll be right back? Do you just not do that and just kind of stay and only step away for a couple minutes? How does it work so that you don't end up like completely killing your stream, but also don't kill yourself at the same time?
Yeah, it can be tricky, but I think most people like encourage you. Like if I'm like, I'm gonna take a short break and go like sit outside. It's a nice day. I'll be back in a little bit. People I think are like, yes, please, like don't like hurt yourself over this. Like they want you to be doing the best thing for yourself. They want you to be doing well. Most people like wish you well.
But don't they go watch something else and like not come back?
Here's a hot take for you on that one, and this is as somebody who does like whenever Andrew's streaming, I'm exactly that guy who puts it on a second screen and does my work because it's just nice having someone else working on things. And whenever something's stressing me out, I can turn to the second screen and go, "Can I help with that?" Okay, cool. That just separates from my own work. So if you want to solve that problem of people not turning away, a really simple trick is a lot of people do a second view in OBS or something, which is a BRB screen that just comes up in full. And if you just have a little animated screen and have one of those free online radio things going, pick something lo-fi like, and you've now got a way that it's like, because again, a lot of people are there passively consuming it while they work. So if you just switch seamlessly over to lo-fi radio for a bit and then back to you when you return, you'll probably retain a lot of the people who are just sort of enjoying the vibes.
Yeah, I had a be right back screen for a while, but my OBS and my Stream Deck don't always work right, and I need to reconfigure the whole thing, I think. But so recently, I've just been like, when my brother came over once a month ago or so, or unexpectedly, so all of a sudden I just threw up I think it was Photoshop was already up, so I just opened a window and said, "My brother just showed up, be right back," and just muted the microphone and left for 20 minutes. But I agree that bathroom breaks are the big thing. You gotta go to the bathroom as well. Most of us do. And so a be right back screen would be helpful. And I think, Jason, actually, then you mentioned going outside. That's actually got me into thinking, well, that's a cool aside. If you had like, your iPhone camera and you could walk outside if you wanted to sit outside while just talking about philosophy of game development or something, it could be a nice little break while taking a break from the stream, but not really taking a break from the stream. And like, I don't know. Could be some good content for YouTube shorts too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you can't switch between devices midstream without stopping it and losing viewership. And then, the thing about stopping a stream and starting it again is once you stop it, it goes blank to everyone until they refresh.
Yeah.
Which has been a real problem for me because I've been having Unity and OBS crashing each other. I'm not exactly sure, but so it's
well the trick around that, a bit sneaky, but the way you get around that one is you register your phone as a webcam. You can use software which will make your phone show up as a virtual webcam. Then you would have that show up as one of the sources in OBS, and you could switch to a second source, which is actually the webcam, and then you could take that outside and it connects through Wi-Fi and it would still work. It's a bit roundabout, but it would kind of allow you to do that.
It's a good suggestion. Yeah, that would be cool actually.
Does that work over the internet too? So you can do it without Wi-Fi?
There is software to do it. Yeah, I've not done it myself, but I have seen it done with a Wi-Fi. So obviously it adds another millisecond or two of latency depending on your networking and whatever. But realistically, the ability to just switch to a second phone and walk outside while you're still in your Wi-Fi range is entirely doable.
It'd be nice.
Yeah,
obviously, you don't want the camera with you every time you take a break. But But that could be
Yeah.
nice for something like going to sit outside, or if I go to make a coffee, I could just continue hanging out with people because, but in reality, like, you're a human being. I think the ideal situation is to become as much Android as possible, so you don't need to take any breaks. I'm currently in the process of becoming completely robotic, so that I don't need any of those breaks. But
that's definitely an idea. Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity. I've got a bunch of different spots set up in my office for recording that I haven't found a good excuse to use yet. So it's actually a perfect reason to do that. I can like set up the other cameras there and then just go out there and chill when I need to take a break. Yeah, I guess it'll be okay. I'll figure something. It's gonna be fun though. I'm getting excited now about just setting up the stream and now about setting up multiple camera shots and a phone so I can walk outside. There were a couple questions that popped up specifically for you, for I guess for both of you, that I wanted to pop up. Like, how do you deal with streaming to multiple services at once, like YouTube and Twitch? So that's something that I do really terribly. I basically just completely ignore the fact that I'm streaming to Twitch. And I want to stop doing that. So is there like a setup or a way that you do that? Do you both stream to both services?
Do you, Andrew?
I did at the very, very beginning. I did the restream method, but I stopped because I couldn't get working the way I really wanted to work. And Twitch was just nothing. Like nobody was there, and people are on YouTube already. So I haven't done it in a while. I think I want to get back into doing that essentially because it makes sense. And the chat here that we're seeing through Restream shows both chats, but even then most people are on YouTube, it looks like. But yeah. But I think now that there's a game dev section on Twitch, and there's been for a while now. So I think I need to get into that.
For myself, I as a partner, you're actually not allowed to do that. I'm not sure what it is for affiliate, but you're not allowed to stream on your Twitch stream on other platforms.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting. Okay. So do you just stream to Twitch then and not YouTube at all?
Right, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But
well, now I don't know.
I would stream to YouTube as well. I would stream to everything if I could, but it's not allowed.
Oh,
they actually only just recently changed it. I wasn't up until like maybe a month ago as a partner. I wasn't allowed to stream at all ever on any other platform. So not even like Instagram, TikTok. I could not live stream if I wanted to keep my partnership with Twitch.
Oh, wow.
Like,
okay.
Even if it was at a different time. Like, yeah, pretty crazy.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Can you explain what the partnership is? To be honest, like I barely know shit about Twitch. So I don't really understand like the different tiers and the setup there.
Yeah. So you start off just like a regular user, and then once you meet certain requirements in terms of viewership, I think maybe some other things like hours streamed, or I'm not exactly sure what they are these days. It's been a few years and it's changed a lot over time. They didn't even have affiliate when I started, but you get like affiliate status, which is when you can start getting like subs, you can start getting bits. You basically can start earning money as an affiliate, but your payout is less than once you become a partner. You get like a better split, which is still only, I think, like not great, but but it's a little bit better than it would be if you're an affiliate, if you're a partner.
Oh, okay. So you got to it's just kind of like leveling up, higher monetization, and I assume probably them promoting your stuff more.
Yeah, I would like that, but no, they don't really do much for that.
No, they're to be honest, there's a lot of interesting behind the scenes stuff. I follow some YouTube content that is around creating streams, and so even though I don't stream myself, I like to look at the trades, as they say. And there's some interesting stuff going on with that non-compete style approach of things. And the short answer is, they very much treat themselves like a talent agency, where they're trying to accrue people to main content to retain hours for watch. And so you actually have to really push for yourself. So there's a lot of like, even though it is a blanket rule to say you can't stream multiple places as a partner, there are partners who do stream in multiple places because they have arranged preferential deals, because they can do that with their particular, their audience sizes and that kind of thing. So unlike most other online media platforms, like Google is pretty transparent and universal. Yes, there is like contact people you can get if you're high enough and you have certain different things, but for the most part, the rules do apply blanketly, except for like overrides for the particularly big channels. Twitch, on the other hand, is almost bespoke. It's like on a person by person basis, depending on who you know and who you can contact. And there's lots of behind the scenes stuff about people getting different offers and different deals and different pay rates and stuff, entirely dependent on who you know and who you can contact. So Twitch is an interesting space. And to be fair to them, it's because it grew very dynamically. YouTube was a big company that sort of added features. Twitch was, Twitch has changed names and platform like 3 or 4 times and changed its business model and multiple different things. Was it Justin TV was its original before it was even Twitch? So they're trying to evolve, and they were the ones kind of leading the landscape of how it all changed. So it's a bit up in the air. I do think a lot of people are moving to YouTube because they're a lot more standardized in how they're doing it, and you can rely on what you can or can't do. But yeah, it is an interesting space right now getting into streaming.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I'm still gonna get on there and see how it goes. But I'm less excited about the whole Twitch side now. It'll probably be fine though. There was one other question I wanted to make sure to jump into, because this is the one that I think everybody can probably answer, and it was about making a stream entertaining versus educational. Because a lot of the time, like the content that I put out is, at least in the past, always been like super like direct educational, like here's the problem, here's how you solve it. When it comes to a stream, there's, I think like Andrew said, a lot of people are not really paying attention. They're doing other things, and it's more for entertainment and stuff. But they're also probably learning things along the way. I don't know. What do you guys think about like this balance? Do you need to balance it? Can it just be 100% entertaining? My thought was like, if I'm writing code and showing that ChatGPT can just make my game for me, that's probably educational, but I don't know how structured it is. So I don't know. I'm curious what everybody thinks.
I think it has to be entertaining. Otherwise, people won't care about the education. And, think about your best teachers in any class that you've ever taken. The best teachers were probably entertaining while they were teaching you. So I figure if it's something's very dry, there might be a few people who just really love the content, but in a way they're being entertained by that. So you could argue that. But in general, I think it's got to be both entertaining and educational, and sometimes maybe more entertaining than educational if you want to keep people engaged. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, it's a kind of an interesting, that's a good question. So I think it really depends on your own personal preference. I think like what are you going into this to achieve, right? Are you trying to get a big following? Is that your goal? Are you trying to provide an educational channel? Is that your goal? While I do definitely answer any questions I can that come up, especially in terms of like, how do you do this? What's this? Like, I 100% want to answer those, because I know it can take like a few minutes for me to answer, and it can save somebody days of getting stuck on something when I was first starting off. And I had questions like those. I didn't know where to go. And so when somebody comes to my channel and they have those questions, I'm so eager to like, here's the quick answer. Glad you came here, because, it saves you having to wait for a forum or somebody to answer the question. So I do want to answer questions, but I'm not actually focused on making it entertaining, and I'm not really focused on making it educational. My priority is getting my game done. And at the end of the day, that's always the number one priority. And I think people actually come because of that. So like, it might not be that entertaining sometimes because we're programming. Like it might be entertaining to some people, but that's really boring stuff to a lot of people. And, I'm doing art. And so sometimes the programmers don't do art, and sometimes the artists don't do programming. So it's not going to always be entertaining. And it's going to be educational if you're paying attention, because you can see how I'm doing it, but it might not apply to you. At the end of the day, a lot of people, I think, come to my stream because they see that I'm there every single day. They see that I'm working hard. They see that I'm not giving up. And I think that is what draws people to the channel, is like, she's doing it, I can do it, So like, I think you have to look at what is important to you and why you're doing it. And the people who value that will come and hang out with you too.
Yeah, I think that inspiration part is probably a huge thing there. Just people seeing that actually building the game, like, and I go back and see like this started a long time, or not even that long ago. Kind of see the whole process and see showing up consistently and making that daily progress. That's probably a big motivator for a lot of people to come watch constantly. It makes a lot of sense. And I think it simplifies things too, if you just focus on the game and less on the stream, which is probably what I want to do too, because I want to get stuff done quickly. And if I do other shit, if I try to be entertaining and add a bunch of flashy stuff or talk too much, I'll never get stuff done.
I would say though that if you're having fun, then that's going to be entertaining to people. You know,
well said. Yeah,
it's infectious. So if you're having fun, you don't need flashy stuff. Unless that's what you want. If that makes you excited, then by all means.
I just want fancy backgrounds and lots of cool asset store art.
Well, there you go. Then that's what, if that makes you happy. I mean, I like making really nice Mid-Journey icons I spend a half an hour before a stream just trying to get the best image for the icon for some reason, even though that really has nothing to do with the stream. And I like to make jokes when they pop into my head, but that's just me. So I'm not trying to do that. I think if you're just having fun doing what you're doing, then it's going to be very entertaining. And the backgrounds, I mean, obviously you win the game there. So
I got to show you the other one out there. I don't think I've shown it to you yet. It's my favorite so far. It's all Star Wars themed. So Jason, Powell, you guys have thoughts on this? I mean, even if you're not doing the streams, I'm sure you're watching plenty of streams, and I know you both do at least a little bit of streaming. So thoughts on entertainment education on this? No, everybody's.
I have a few things I could say on this. I will say, outside of programming, this is the topic I've probably spent the most time researching. The relationship between storytelling, entertainment, and education, and it's a really interesting line to walk. The summary of what I was going to do a big rambly story and then get to a conclusion on was already beaten by Andrew. He got to the point I was going to get to in the end, which is a lot of people spend too much time focusing on whether they're entertaining or not. But the truth of the matter is, and this is in everything in life, people who are enthusiastic about something are inherently entertaining. When you see anybody talk about, if you find the world's most passionate stamp collector, it doesn't matter. You'll be like, I'm just riveted. I'm just curious, because if they're talking about it with such passion and interest, that's going to come across. So the short answer is that the reason why a lot of people who you wouldn't think are being followed for their content, it's because of that. It's because passion comes through. People like to go on the journey. And unrelated to that, game dev as a concept, it's a dream project. A lot of people want to be game devs, and there's a passion concept to it. And so it's basically got that pseudo narrative of going on a journey. And a lot of people like to be brought along the journey and take part and see something be built over time and see how it goes. And so there's a lot of camaraderie in the whole process as a whole. Now, if you want to be more cynical and go at it from the business side of it, the more cynical answer is that nobody in the world wants to be educated. And it's a weird thing to say, but what I mean by that is, if you could take a pill or like wave a magic wand and get the knowledge without going through the educational process, everyone would. Nobody wants a course. Everybody wants the result of a course. And so education is always something you're struggling with, is that you need it. But the truth is, nobody actually ever wants to be educated. They want to have been educated. And so it's something to think about when you're structuring content. So when it comes to teaching, the trick is to get the information across in a way where you're never actively engaging with the teaching process. You're engaging with their brain. You're giving them things that lets them build the narrative in their head. And so a lot of the way that I teach and talk is very much about sowing seeds. I treat it like there's a mental garden, and I'm giving people ideas, and they're building up those ideas in their head, and they're constructing something. And so the kinds of teaching that happens from a streaming course or something is very beneficial for that, because you're not forcibly trying to get information across. You're doing a thing, people are watching you, and they're going, ooh, what's that? And then you're elaborating. And so that gets the wheels turning. And so people find watching streaming educational because of the actual format lends itself to education, but it's not the goal, right? So the short answer is, nobody ever wants educational content. You want to be making entertaining content, but you don't have to try to make entertaining content. You just have to be passionate in what you're doing, and ipso facto, you'll be making entertaining content. There's the roundabout thing that Andrew summed up with just basically be yourself. Truthfully, that's genuinely the actual answer.
It's funny. And yeah, you guys have mentioned there's a few people who are just really passionate about the things that they're into. Like somebody mentioned the Steve, the MRE guy. He's just opening like old like a foods that's like you get in the army basically, and it's like this really nasty looking meal, and he's like so excited to try it and so entertaining to watch. Or the guy who's like a TikTok star from Train Spotting, but he's like losing it when the train's rolling, and he's like, oh my god, it's the whatever train, and he's like freaking out. So like, yeah, I think you're right on that. I think the passion is infectious.
I'm gonna have to get more passionate. There was one other question here. Andrew's back. There was one other question. I just lost it. I thought I pinned it. Where'd it go? About which part is more fun, and I'm really curious. Where the hell? I lost my question.
It was
thinking of
game development
there
or streaming.
Yeah, I wanted to ask before I ask the question though. In just a few minutes, I forgot in the email that I sent out, I mentioned I was going to give out a GameDev Guild Pro Pass. So after this question, I'm going to ask a quick question about it. And the first person to answer with the correct answer in chat will win the pass. So I just wanted to give everybody a chance to get ready to type in a few minutes when it's time. So the question here was, for streamers, is streaming more enjoyable for you than actual game development? And I'm kind of curious about this. When I saw the question, it made me think to myself, like, I don't know. I was like, wait, which one is more enjoyable? I'm not sure how I would answer this. So I'm curious for you guys, is it more fun to actually stream? Is it more fun to make games? Is it kind of equal, or is it only fun doing them together?
Andrew, why don't you start?
Okay. There are days where I want to stream and I'm looking forward to that, where I say, I'm going to have fun. This is going to be fun. There are days where I just don't want to stream, where I just want to focus in my own little bubble on the game. But in both cases, I am doing game dev and I'm having fun doing game dev. That's the fun. It's the problem solving. It's the creation. It's the seeing the result of my efforts, learning some new stuff, trying the AI out, all that fun stuff. All that process is fun regardless of whether I'm streaming or not. And just for me, it just comes down to whether I'm too tired to stream or whether I've got the time to stream and all that. So it goes back and forth, but it's all game dev.
That's understandable. For myself, it's a tough question. I think like it's almost impossible, or like it's difficult to answer, because I always stream game development, so like almost always. So it's really like tied together for me. It's hard to be like I said, when I wake up, even today I had to record something. I'm like, oh, I don't want to get up. I don't want to record. I just want to go on stream and work on my game. And anything outside of it, I'm always like, I just want to go on stream, work on my game. But so I see them like connected. Sometimes I stream things that aren't game development. Take a little break and do one thing or another, and it's not as fun. It's just not the same thing, and I don't like it nearly as much. Game development on its own, I think, is still very fun, but it's more fun when I'm hanging out with people, and it's not like, especially long. Like, have you guys ever gone like weeks on end of just working on your own project without hanging out with people? That can get really like isolating and a little bit you can kind of start to lose a little bit. So it's nice to like have people to talk to while I'm doing it. I like them together. I can't really pick.
Yeah, I like pair programming on stuff or working with a designer constantly. Jason, it looks like you got a thought here.
Yeah, being the boring, always leading effect to some research I've done is enjoyable to me is such an intangible, but the way I look at it is, are you motivated to do it? Which are you more motivated to do? Is you more motivated to work in the game or to do the streaming? And to do that, there's research and motivation. And it's very useful when learning it from a game design perspective, but it boils down to, if you want someone to do something and you want to motivate them, there's traditionally 3 pillars that are kind of lead into that. The main ones are competency. So you want to feel like you're good at something. If you feel like you suck, you're not going to want to do it. And if you feel like it's too easy, you're not going to want to do it. And so streaming adds a layer of challenge, which makes it more compelling sometimes. The other side of it is you want relatedness, and that's where the streaming comes in, because you're actively like dealing with other people. Otherwise, it feels like you're off alone in your own place, kind of doing nothing. And then the other part, which is the double-edged sword, is autonomy. Because if you stream and feel like you need to stream, like you're either forced to for your career or that people are relying on you and it's no longer you doing it for you, that can be a real kick in the ass to not want to do it. So the short answer is the thing that's most enjoyable is the best balance of those three pillars. And normally, if you're in a good space with your project, it's probably going to be streaming in my case, because I like educating and working with people. But if I'm finding that one is sort of out of balance, like I either feel like I'm not competent enough to do it streaming and get the work done, then I'll go back the other way. Or if I feel like I don't have enough autonomy, that it feels like I'm being forced to create content rather than work on the content I want to do, then I'll go back the other way around. So there's the boring academic answer is I balance the triangle. That's my...
Pal?
I don't stream as
Did
many
you
as you guys. I think when I stream, mostly it's on Discord on some channels that I'm on. And I think that for me, as Jason mentioned, is doing what I prefer to do. Yeah. So if I want to help someone work on some problems or educate someone, I prefer doing that. Yeah, if I prefer to work on my projects or on some assets that I can showcase that I'm working on, then that's it. Yeah. So the streaming is for me another option to work with other people. Yeah. I can always hook up and have some call. The streaming is more like getting bigger audience, more people to it. Yeah. I more prefer to work with people and be able to chat, have, as I said on Discord, many people talk together when I'm working, rather than just streaming.
Oh, I've done that quite a few times too, where and I don't know if anybody else has. I don't know, change the subject, but where we actually work like online together with the rest of the team, small teams like 3-4 people, and we're just on a call the entire time while we're working, going through stuff. I found that to be somewhat productive, but I think the mob programming and pair programming stuff I found to be super, super productive. It's just nearly impossible to convince people to actually do it and to match up timelines, especially now that everybody is remote everywhere and nobody's in an office. makes it a little difficult. All right, I'm gonna ask that question real quick for the free pro pass. So for whoever wants to win it, it's a free pass for the conference that's coming up May 1st through the 5th. We've got, I don't know, 30 something talks from different industry experts on mostly Unity specific stuff. Jason Story, I think three of the four of you will be there presenting, and we've got a lot of other great speakers. We got a lot of people from Unity that are going to be talking about some of the stuff that they're working on, some of the new things. Even John Riccatello is going to be there for a little Q&A, which will be a lot of fun. I'm really excited for that. So if you're interested in it, you can go check it out. Tomorrow we've got a meetup pre-event mixer where we're just going to get together and gather. It's a virtual expo hall. Can run around, talk, and have a couple roundtable sessions, and mostly just kind of network, meet other people, chat with everybody. It's a very casual, very fun little setup. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out. And if you want to win the pass, get ready to just type out the answer. I think for the question, we'll just keep it simple. Just the first person who can paste in or type out, I would recommend pasting in the title of Lana's talk tomorrow, or on the first day of it. So find her talk, paste it in. Whoever pastes in the title of it first will win. And we'll figure it out whenever that is. There's a little bit of a delay, so I assume it'll happen in a minute.
Yeah, so somebody's gonna quickly realize that they weren't watching live.
Yeah, they're gonna come back. Well, if they're not watching live, then they'll be leaving a comment. So we'll wait. Oh, there we go.
Sometimes you get lagged and you don't realize you're 30 seconds behind everybody else.
Oh yeah. Well, congrats. We've got a winner. Just send me an email. I will send you over the code. Oh, so close. We got a couple more that came in just a little bit behind. Sweet. I made the question just what was the title of your talk? So people could go to the page and scan down there and find it. All right. Let's see. Were there any other questions that you guys saw in chat that you wanted to take this week?
Just taking a look at them now, actually.
How long can you work
I
on
was
a
just
game?
about to
I would
say
say
that.
about 2 dozen years.
for your entire life, I suppose.
Yes, I've seen some that have been in development for at least over a decade.
Technically, the Legend of the Stones, the game I'm very, very slowly working on, has been in development for 7 years. And if you want to go back even further, it was actually the game I wanted to make before the Barbarian. So that goes back now 11 years when I first started learning Unity, because the first game I wanted to make was this game. But as I started working on it, I realized it was out of my league. To be fair, the Barbarian was out of my league too. But I got there eventually. And so I put it off. But then once the Barbarian came out, I was like, what am I going to do next? And it was this. But then I got a day job, and but hey, it's going to be better once it eventually comes out.
Story. This question popped up earlier, and I know I popped it up and you saw it, but they did ask if you can write a book, bottom left dude. And I think that I don't know if it's worth it time-wise for you, but I'm sure that people would definitely love it and buy it. It's funny, I was actually just emailing a book publisher this morning about some book they had to review on Unity stuff. So yeah, are you gonna write a book for them?
Well, my problem is always like on what, because I can never keep a sentence or a thought straight for longer than 10 minutes. So if I'm writing a book, it's going to start out with game theory and game design and move on to programming, and then I'll get bored and start talking about movies I like, and it's just unless someone gives me some actual structure of something they really want me to write a book on, it's going to be pretty tough.
That actually sounds like a fun read.
Yeah, you've got to intertwine the theory and actual education with the movies you love, so that every chapter is basically teaching a game dev concept through a movie that you love, or The Simpsons.
Well, it is funny, like jokes aside, something I have thought about is I think there's a really interesting conversation to be had about the change of medium, how we've moved from books to movies to games. And there's a language around things like Kuleshov effect for film and how you describe the relationship between scenes, but we don't really have as much of a language in games because it's a more junior medium. And so looking at games through the lens of other mediums, the fact that it is effectively all-encompassing other mediums, it is storytelling, it isn't audio and whatever, I think there's a good topic in there, because a lot of the other things I think are not respected as much as they could be. Like game design is the effects of audio design in game design is fascinating. Like there's tons of stuff. You could write an entire book just on dynamic audio, and so there's lots of ways you could tie all this stuff together. So yeah, maybe there is something in there. Who knows?
So there was another question about the Geno kids. I did mention it. Yorai had brought it up, and we're going to talk about it. I think we'll talk about it tomorrow and next week. I wanted to make sure that Yorai is here. Yorai called it out, and it looks awesome. I would definitely go check it out. They had a Kickstarter. It was like fully funded in the first day. It looks amazing visually. So yeah, go check it out, and it's linked down below. We'll talk about it next week though, when we get some time, and we'll get to dive into the Tetris stuff once everybody has actually seen it, not just me and Paul, because it's definitely. There was one more question I want to make sure to answer, which was, what do you do when you realize that you have bitten off more than you can chew? And did this happen for you? Or has this probably happened for all four of you? I know it's happened for me. So who wants to just dive in on, on this one?
I have a little story for this one, actually. So a long time ago, when I was doing like web development as opposed to game development, I was doing different hobbies, whether it was a little mini game here or a little app over here, and I was just bouncing around on different ideas. And I basically never finished any of them. I ended up doing like a really simple Flash game, like very, very basic. I wanted to practice drawing and like doing vector drawing. I wanted to practice my action script programming. So I made a very simple game, and there was a few people who played it and asked for some requests. So I ended up like spending a little bit more time and like put that out there, but it was so simple. Like I never put any real thought into it. And I kept going off onto these other tasks and not finishing them for one reason or another. And then like years later, I found out that my game had been played by like millions of people, and people were like loving it. And I put it on a website, and it was started making like hundreds of dollars just from like ad revenue per month.
Oh,
and
wow.
I had this like revelation. I'm like, this was the smallest project I've taken on, yet it's the only one I tackled. Imagine if I actually finished one of the bigger projects. What could that have amounted to? And so I kind of made this promise to myself to stop abandoning projects. Doesn't matter how daunting it is, because it will always feel daunting. And just get it done. Figure out how to bring it. If it goes out of hand, try to bring it back and try to get that game done, because it's so easy to look at the next thing, like at the shiny new thing, and think it's going to be easier and faster and simpler, but you just have to sometimes get it done and put that work in. That's my opinion on it. I know that's kind of a long-winded story, but that's kind of the mentality I go in with.
The keep chewing.
Keep chewing.
Yeah. That's good. That's interesting. The game too that you just randomly put out there, suddenly realize, like, see that it's suddenly successful and realize that maybe you should make games instead of apps, which is probably not the kind of thing that's likely to happen with apps. I can't imagine that you make an app and suddenly it just randomly blows up. At least not without advertising the hell out of it.
Right. True.
But the shiny thing is the problem that I always run into. It's like, oh, this thing it'll be easier, it'll be more profitable, it'll definitely be a much better thing, and everybody will love it more. So I'll just switch to that.
Yeah.
So who else has got some thoughts? Jason, you look like you got something right on the tip of your mind.
I always do, don't I? There's two in particular, the quotes that came to my mind when I read that question. The first one that really stood out to me when I first read it was the idea that you don't get to choose which of your projects is successful. And that's really something to think about, is that there's things that you will dedicate your time to and spend years on, and there's things that you'll throw away in a weekend that you think's just silly, and other people will glom onto and it'll turn out to be the thing you're known for. And you can take whatever lessons you like from that, but the one that I think is most valuable is, if you don't know which of your things are going to be successful, banking and putting all your eggs in one basket is not a good strategy. You're better off releasing the things that even you aren't happy with, because other people might like them as a result, right? So they might be the thing that gravitates with other people. So that's the first one. And then the second part of that, from my perspective, is everything I've ever tried to do turned out to be more complicated than I thought it was. There's nothing in the world I've ever tried to do is like, oh, there's less detail in this than I thought there was. Everything, if you care about it, level design's more complicated, game design's more complicated, programming's more everything's more complicated. And so if the question is, what do you do when you find yourself in too deep? The answer is, embrace the fact that you will find yourself in too deep, because if you haven't, it means you haven't looked into the problem well enough to realize you're actually drowning. That's every project is all too complicated. And so the trick isn't to let that make your decision making for you. It's to just be aware that every single project is going to be bigger than you think it is. And so try to pick smaller projects. And if you can't, then lean on the final cliched quote, which is, how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time, right? To go back to the chewing concept, is that no matter how complicated the task is, you don't have to solve the whole thing. You just have to solve the next step in front of you. So yeah, it's a tough problem to solve. I find myself getting in that problem a lot less now. In fact, I have the opposite problem. Personally, I'm very risk adverse, and so I don't take chances that I should. And I have other people kick me in the ass and go, you should probably go do this thing. So I have to kind of do the opposite. I have to push myself out of the bounds a bit and try myself to do things a bit more than I think I could do. But yeah, everyone has to balance their own particular approaches,
I think everybody likes your thoughts on this too in chat, from what I can see. Pal, you got some thoughts on this one? I mean, this must happen to you sometimes. You build these giant, insane art packs that are freaking enormous and huge and super high. Does it ever come up, or is this just not a problem?
I would say that in the past few years, all our projects were too big that we thought we can show, because as we develop a game, especially the AAA games, which are most are some of our clients, they aim at the graphic levels that will be in 3-4 years. So when we are developing ad assets, we have to aim for the developers that we aim into 4 years into the future. So we have to have developed now something that someone will release in about 6 years. Yes, so we have to get the engines, the Unity engine, the Unreal engine, to the max of what capabilities it can now or be able to do in next 2 to 3 years. Yeah, so most often we try to overestimate what it will be capable in those 2 to 3 years. Yeah, we rather go overestimate and have something that's better what you can do right now than what was already done. Yeah. So then that's mostly what we do. Yeah, we are aiming always more than we can chew, because we prefer at the end of the road, like we did this time. For example, you saw big castle, lava, and so on. Yeah, we had to split it into 2 parts. Yeah, because for example, Unity Asset Store doesn't allow assets bigger than a few gigabytes, and it's a lot bigger than a few gigabytes of assets, these 2 things. So we had to split it up. So we will be releasing the one that's behind my back, lava asset, that will be releasing in I think 2 weeks to video, then 1 week for marketing, so about 3 to 4 weeks, and the bigger asset will be released a month later. Yeah, so we are attacking always bigger things that we can. But that's our role. Yeah, we have to give the developers the possibilities that they want to use in the next few years of the work. But that's
why your stuff is so popular. Like, and that's for everybody who is watching live. The lava in his background is from one of the assets. Like, that's actual Unity asset. Go grab it. I just linked the sale that you've got too. There's a sale that was on the
on Unreal Marketplace.
Unreal Store, correct?
Yes.
Right.
So yeah,
And then,
one sentence and I'm ending. So for us, we are always we know that we are always getting more than we can chew, but in our pipeline we know when that's time for release, and then we are just cutting off what we were able to do and what we will be adding to the next assets in the future, and then getting it back into the assets that we already released. Yeah, because we develop new technology, we always try to get it to as many assets that we are already at the start with the updates.
Yeah, that makes it. You got a lot of stuff too to backport it all into. So
yeah,
it's a lot of work. It's super impressive. Andrew, I'm kind of curious though, because you do games and assets,
and I bite off more than I can chew all the time.
Yeah, is it harder on the game side? Do you find like your game design is just way overboard, or is it harder on the asset side where you're like, oh, I had this super ambitious character setup idea and it's way, way bigger and way more work? Where do you deal? I guess you don't have to tell me which one's worse. I'm just kind of curious if one's obviously much worse for this problem and how you deal with it.
Yeah, if I had to abstract it out, we bite off more than we can chew on the things that we don't understand so much. And so, over time, I've become a better developer. So the game dev stuff used to be the hardest thing. But, I'm when I first started learning Unity, I gave up, right? I saw Indie Game the movie and said, I want to do this. I was in an impasse in my life. I wanted to make games all of a sudden. And I got a book at Barnes & Noble and I gave up because there was a bug in the book and I couldn't figure out how to fix the bug. And, then I saw the movie again 6 months later and said, screw it, you can do this. So I started doing it. And I did it over and over and over again, by more than I could chew, but I would always take a step back, try to do a smaller thing. I did a few small things. Got trademark infringement on my first release on the iPhone app. Turns out the word photo hunt is trademarked. So I got my first game taken down. And then at some point I said, I'm going to make the RPG now. And I started working on the one I'm working on now. Did some stuff that was way over my head. Actually succeeded in some aspects of it. I had a visual inventory system that was probably the worst developed visual inventory system in the world, but it worked, and which was cool. But then I took a step back and made a different project that was full of things I couldn't, so it was a combination of just powering through and just keep chewing it and doing that, taking breaks, with also stepping back and sometimes saying, you know what, I guess I don't need to do that. Maybe there are certain things that you just don't need to do. And in the same vein, with the asset development stuff, there are things on my computer that have been sitting there for years that I kind of would like to finish at some point, but they were just bigger than I could chew at the time. And maybe I'll come back to them and revisit it and start over. But, sometimes you just have to take the steps out and then see if you can do it. And if you can't, take a step back and push on that. And then maybe every once in a while go in a different direction, do something else for a while.
I think that's fair. I just wanted to finish saying that it's something that was always a problem for me up until recently. Now whenever I have a problem that's too big, I just put it into Chat GPT and it gives me an answer. So the last couple things that I thought were going to be overly difficult, I put it in, and like within 5 minutes, I had the complete solution and all of the code, and it just worked. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's changing. Maybe it's just my messed up perspective this month, but it's definitely different. Before we go, though, I wanted to really quickly share Jason Story's Discord for everybody who hasn't seen it. You want to just tell everybody what that's about? I always recommend people go in there because the chat is great.
And I have to warn people too, because I get a lot of confused questions about this. My Discord is a private Discord. It's not free to access. Mostly because I don't want to deal with bots and I don't want to deal with spam from people. And so I have it on my Ko-fi page with whatever the lowest number was, or like $1 or $2. And that gets you unlimited access from that point forward. Just a gate to get rid of the bots. So when a lot of people are asking, where's the link to the Discord? Well, it's if you connect to Ko-fi, it'll automatically give you the link to there. As for what my Discord is, it's just a community of people talking about this stuff. There's and a lot of the people here are there, and we just sort of talk about game design and game development and various topics. There's stream channels in there. Sometimes people stream their work and give reviews for each other on things. And yeah, it's a fun place. There we go.
Lots of interesting discussions that happen in there, and random debates when things pop up on Twitter and other stuff that are kind of game dev related. So I would highly recommend it. It's one of the few channels I watch it probably more than any other Discord, although I very rarely watch Discord channels. But out of the ones that I watch, it's the one I probably watch the most. And Lana, you want to really quickly talk about Strain, and then I want to also share your Twitch channel as well. Just tell everybody who hasn't already grabbed it, they can still go grab the demo and play it right now on Steam, right? It's still up there available.
That's right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the game itself is being worked on. My streams every day are me working on this game specifically. So that might be programming, it might be the art for it, it might be I've been overhauling a few systems. Yeah, you can play the demo and kind of get an idea of the feeling of the game, though I think it's going to be a little different after it's all done. So I'm kind of if you come by the stream, you'll see kind of where we're going with the new direction. And it's a single-player, first-person survival game with a strong narrative element, and it takes place in like an apocalyptic kind of neon city where these wild factions and interesting characters you come across. So that's the premise of Strain, and my stream is just me working on that daily, and we hang out and chat, talk game development and related things. So that's on Twitch.
Yeah, there's the Twitch link. The game is definitely worth just jumping in and going in and playing. The narrative stuff is really cool. There's lots of cool voiceover storytelling, and I like the environment personally. I like the environment was like nice and sci-fi, kind of cyberpunky, but I also was able to navigate and figure out what things were. I was so happy that everything had signs on them that I could just read, like all of the stores. I could tell what it was just by looking at the slide. Yeah, so it's a very, very cool game, and I think being able to see the game development process and go watch the stream and ask questions and get answers and kind of see what that's like is more than worth it, which is exactly like I said, why I want to copy what you're doing there and do something similar in the very near future. So it's very cool. Definitely go subscribe on Twitch or become a member.
No, you
right
just
on Twitch. Is that what they do?
Sorry, you could have.
Yeah, my
stream
whole
started for a
internet
second,
just
but no, with Twitch it's not like you have to pay to watch. It's free to watch. You can subscribe to channels, and that gives you access to like emotes and ad-free viewing and that kind of thing, but it's totally open and free. You don't have to pay for anything.
Okay, I'll go subscribe anyway. Just I always recommend go subscribe. And then Andrew, you've got an asset bundle that I think we've shared a couple times. I'm just gonna drop that up there real quick. Any last words on that bundle?
It's if you're looking to populate your game with a lot of stuff, then it's not cheap, but right now it's 50% off, so it's a lot cheaper now. But there's so much stuff in there. There's music and sound effects and concept art and everything's customizable. Yeah, so there's a lot.
And I love
I would buy it, Andrew, but I've already got all of those myself.
There's certainly going to be people who already have them all. Yes, and I like you people the best. Don't tell the others.
And also, don't forget to check out Powell's art up on the Unreal. This is on the Unreal Store, but you're gonna have. I wonder if you're gonna be in the spring sale. I don't know. I'll have to find out. Hopefully, I don't know if you're allowed to talk about it yet, or if you know. So we'll talk about that soon once we know. And then I guess the last thing I want to mention is the GameDev Guild Conference is coming up. It's May 1st through the 5th. We've got a lot of great speakers. Again, some of them are right here. We're talking about all kinds of really actionable Unity development stuff. The passes I think there's still an Easter discount on the page right now. And then we've got a meetup event tomorrow that's kind of a pre-show thing, just to hang out, chat, and go over a couple roundtables on AI and game and code architecture stuff. I think will be a lot of fun. So, yep, I can't wait for tomorrow as well. It's going to be a blast. So, thanks everybody for joining, and yes, thank you all for coming out. This is a great episode. I had a lot of fun. Hopefully, everybody here had fun, and everybody in chat did. If you did, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe and share, and go subscribe to everybody else's stuff. And yeah, I guess anybody want to say bye? I'll find
Thanks for hosting, Jason. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Good luck.